Hi, I'm Brooke McCorkle Okazaki, and thank you so much for listening to my presentation, Gender, Japan, and Tristan for Women, Takarazuka's Wagner adaptation. I also want to thank the AMS Homestacone Travel Grant and the Japan Foundation for funding research from today's presentation. In 1967, Japan's classical music world was abuzz. For the first time in its illustrious history, the Bayreuth Festival would perform abroad. Its destination, Osaka, Japan. There, Bayreuth cast and crew members would offer Japanese opera aficionados multiple performances of Wieland Wagner's productions of Die Walküre and Tristan und Isolde as part of the Osaka International Festival's 10th anniversary. While this was neither the first time a German opera company had toured Japan, nor was it the national premiere of Tristan und Isolde, the Bayreuth Festival's tour to Osaka was momentous. The production, and especially star soprano Birgit Nilsson, astounded reviewers, as you can see in this quote. The Bayreuth Festival's immense success in Osaka in 1967 inspired local theaters like the Takarazuka Revue. The following year, in July of 1968, the all-female Takarazuka Musical Theater Company staged its own version of Tristan und Isolde. Railway and department store tycoon Kobayashi Ichizo founded the Takarazuka Revue in 1913 amidst a popular culture steeped in silent cinema, cabaret, and operetta. Just as Wagner's Bayreuther Festspiele lured pilgrims in search of entertainment to rustic Bayreuth, the Revue's performances at the Takarazuka Grand Theatre were meant to attract visitors to the sleepy resort village, also called Takarazuka. It's located between Osaka and Kobe. Guests would arrive via the Hankyu Railway line, conveniently also owned by Kobayashi. Eventually, a department store and beauty salon were added to attract female patrons to Takarazuka, while the Takarazuka Familyland amusement park entertained their children. The Revue's empire, which is still active today, epitomizes Gesamtkunst capitalism that reflects the merging of art, entertainment, and commerce. With the Takarazuka Revue, Kobayashi aimed to develop a form of modern Japanese musical theater that balanced Western musical theater aesthetics with Japanese ones. In his conception of an all-girl theater, Kobayashi borrowed elements from kabuki, a form of local music dance popular since the 17th century. Unlike kabuki, though, which featured exclusively male performers, Takarazuka has actresses performing both male and female roles. Those admitted to the highly competitive training school are coached to perform specifically as either male characters called otokoyaku or female ones called musume-yaku. The Revue's 1968 music theater interpretation of Wagner's Tristan und Isolde in particular tackled issues of love, gender roles, and androgyny that are at the core of Takarazuka's aesthetic and, as Jean-Jacques Nattier has suggested, Wagner's opera. Now, in the rest of this talk, I consider the production and reception of the troupe's 1968 realization of Tristan und Isolde, concentrating on the leading otokoyaku in the role of Tristan, Maho Shibuki, and her recording of two songs from the musical, The Golden-Haired Isolde and Because of You. By means of a conclusion, I ponder the ways gender performance intersect in Wagner's music drama and Takarazuka's adaptation. Why Tristan? The Takarazuka Revue had experience with other operas by Wagner like Tannhäuser and Lohengrin, but Tristan best suited Takarazuka's formula of a distant land, historical setting, and romantic triangle. It also gave an opportunity for Kamo Sakura and Maho Shibuki, a famous combination in his female and male roles, to perform. And of course, the additional success of Bayreuth's tour also helped. Director and librettist Shirai Tetsuzo spearheaded the Tristan and Isolde for Takarazuka. In his Tristan, Shirai looked not only to Wagner, but also to Wagner's own source materials, chiefly the medieval poems of Gottfried Franz Strasberg and Thomas of Brittany. From June 29th to July 29th, 1968, the Takarazuka Revue's Tristan and Isolde entertained fans seeking romantic escapism. The company's Snow Troupe presented the show at the Takarazuka Grand Theater as part of a double bill. Seat prices ranged from 100 to 500 yen, and English-speaking audience members could rent an earphone guide for 100 yen. The musical generally follows Wagner's opera's trajectory, albeit with the additional character of Isolde of the White Hands, and all, of course, supplemented with a touch of Takarazuka flair. Although there were fewer song and dance numbers than is typical for a Takarazuka show, reviewers still favored the show's big choruses like the Sailor's Dance, as well as the finale that is set in heaven. The production's integration of dance, choruses, solos, duets, and drama hints at the Wagnerian aesthetic of Gesamtkunstwerk that was by this time common in Broadway musical theater world in the form of the integrated musical. Now, just as Shirai's libretto for Takarazuka's Tristan borrowed from various sources to create the ideal script, the show's composers, Yoshizaki Kenji and Takaya Yoshizumi, blended a palatable mix of classical and popular music to best suit the performers' voices, which are amplified, and the Takarazuka musical style more generally. Now, although to date I have not been able to locate sheet music for the production, some recordings are available. In 1968, Columbia Records Japan released a 45 RPM single of Tristan and Isolde in stereo for the astonishingly high price of 370 yen. The record features Maho Shibuki, the Otokoyaku star Tristan, exclusively. Although Kamo Sakura, the Musume Yaku who played Isolde, appears on the covers of the program and libretto for the show, reviewers and fans of Takarazuka's Tristan overwhelmingly favored the Otokoyaku Maho. Born in 1935, Maho began training to perform male characters in the Takarazuka Academy as a high schooler. She appeared on stage with them in 1952 and received her first starring role in 1955. By 1968, she was already a seasoned talent, and Shirai praised her as being the best dramatic actress among the review's 400 performers. Columbia must have hoped to capitalize on the Otokoyaku's popularity. The record's 2 tracks, Golden-Haired Isolde and Because of You, highlight Maho's rich alto register and sense of dramatic delivery. However, Maho's recordings for the single undoubtedly diverged from what was heard at the live performances. For example, according to the libretto, the song Golden-Haired Isolde is originally sung by the Ladies in Waiting, with Tristan later singing a variation on it. Here you can see the translated lyrics for Maho's solo recording of the tune, and we will listen to the first verse.
いぞるで清らぬかぐわし花の姿やいぞるで黄金の髪の日に輝きて憧れはバラ色の夢星空に君の名を呼ぶイゾルデ黄金の髪のイゾルデ
The 2.5-minute tune sounds less like an art song and more like a kayo kyoku, a popular genre from the pre-war era that gained greater traction in the 1950s and 60s in Japan. Kayo kyoku combined Western and Japanese musical qualities in popular song. The instrumentation, harmonic progression, and melodic line all denote Golden-Haired Isolde as a kayo kyoku. Maho's voice enters, as we heard, with an 8th note pickup on the name Isolde, which is in Japanese pronounced with 4 syllables, Izorude, stretching the name out over 2 whole measures. Throughout the song, Maho employs rubato and breaths for dramatic emphasis. Her delivery forms a delicate tension with the rhythm section. So, despite the radically different sound world of the tune compared to Wagner's opera, some Wagnerian references also surface in Golden Haired Isolde. The contour of the line Isolde, at the song's conclusion, Isolde, on the notes C, D, C, and B flat, descend in a way that mimics Wagner's own setting of the name. Now, even though Takarazuka's 1968 Tristan and Isolde seems very different from Wagner's, as evidenced by Golden Haired Isolde, it does not escape the shadow of Wagner completely. Because of You, similar in this respect. This song serves as the musical's main theme, and the tune's multiple iterations provide Takarazuka's Tristan and Isolde with a sense of musical cohesiveness. It first appears after the lovers drink the love-death potion and reprises throughout the show. The lyrical content and its musical setting echo the conclusion of Act 1 in Wagner's Tristan, when the couple sings Wie sich die Herzen wogen der Haven in a primarily homophonic texture. This technique, present in both Wagner's and Takarazuka's versions of Tristan and Isolde, is the ultimate in instantly portraying love musically. Now you can see the translation of the lyrics here, which was originally a duet, according to the libretto sung by both characters simultaneously, but of course in this recording featuring Mahoshi Buki, it is just her. And we're listening to the opening of this.
君ゆえに我行くべし君ゆえに我死すべし愛しの人よとこしえに命の限り命の限り我が愛は消えることなし
Now, the recording is only 3 minutes long, and like Golden Haired Isolde, many of its musical components immediately distance the song from the sound world of Wagnerian opera, though in the case of Because of You, the techniques employed are very different. Like most Takarazuka songs, its formal structure is straightforward and balanced. Instrumental prelude, AABCA, instrumental bridge, AABCA, instrumental postlude. Both the prelude and postlude contain the same musical material, and the A portions are nearly identical aside from open or closed cadences. The song's instrumentation, which includes string orchestra, guitar, harp, drum set, and keyboard in addition to voice, is a unique combination. Now, Because of You does not exude a kayo-kyoku aura like that of Golden Haired Isolde. Instead, the string orchestra, which performs the prelude and postlude, immediately evokes, quote, Western art music, unquote, but not that of Wagner's time. Instead, as you probably noticed, the short 10-second bits of music seem to reference J.S. Bach. Now, of course, while this Bach allusion seems out of place in a show that one would assume to be reliant on German Romantic traditions, the reference to the Baroque-era master makes a certain kind of sense. Many of Takarazuka's fans were primarily female, and many of those had some piano lessons growing up. And in Japan, Bach's well-tempered clavier was and continues to be a staple of piano pedagogy. In the context of Because of You, then, the Bach allusion does not represent religiosity or the Baroque era or counterpoint strict harmonic logic that Wagner's Tristan and Isolde toppled. Instead, the song's prelude and postlude are musical gestures referencing European music history in Japan, as it's specifically related to women. Now, lyrically, too, the single version of Because of You can't seem to shake off some Wagnerian influence. The text, especially its lines, Because of you I would live, because of you I would die, conjures up Wagner's So sterben wir, which first appears in Act 2 and, of course, melodically foreshadows the Liebestod. Like Wagner's libretto, the lyrics for Because of You hint at the lover's spiritual sublimation in death. Moreover, So sterben wir is in A-flat major. Because of You is in the relative minor. Whether this was a conscious decision or not on the part of the composers is unclear, but it still generates a connection between the two very different sound worlds of Takarazuka and Wagner. While Because of You's transparent harmonies and compact melody is very different from the Wagnerian opera, Because of You derives from the same emotional well. But the most significant component of both Because of You and Golden-Haired Isolde is Maho Shibuki's alluring androgynous voice. The grain of Maho's husky vocals, along with her manipulation of musical time, evokes the psychological underpinnings of Wagner's lovers just as effectively as a chromatically saturated Tristan chord. Almost since the review's inception, the otokoyaku like Maho have garnered the lion's share of renown. These female players of men's roles do not represent realistic masculinities, but rather idealized ones that are safely confined to the fantasy of the stage and thus safe for female audiences to admire and even desire. Despite Takarazuka's flamboyant melodrama between male and female characters, the all-female revue simultaneously encapsulates the nebulous fluidity of gender performance and attraction. Because of this, among Takarazuka's many opera adaptations, Tristan and Isolde best resonates with the subtextual elements of gender performance immanent to the revue. The androgynous component of Takarazuka's aesthetic amplifies elements of gender fluidity in Wagner's opera. Act 2 of Tristan and Isolde provides one example of the unification of the masculine and the feminine. Lawrence Kramer observed that throughout the Liebesnacht, for example, the characters' exchange of lines and the vocal overlapping, quote, epitomizes the mobility of gender between Tristan and Isolde, end quote. The lovers merge into one, then, both musically and textually. As their voices intertwine, the lyrics for the duet O ewig Nacht, süße Nacht furthermore portray a kind of transmogrification, as you can see in this slide. Now, this is a brief moment in a 5-hour-long opera, accompanied by what is commonly called the redemption motif, though, as Nattier suggests, quote, this theme might legitimately be renamed the androgyny motif, end quote. Nattier writes, only in death can Tristan and Isolde guarantee the eternity of their love. Androgynous union is achieved through the renunciation of the will or the will to live, for only in this way can the lovers attain to a state of nirvana or pure contemplation. The androgyny of Tristan and Isolde is an androgyny of the night dominated by woman, just as music is now the dominant partner in the union of music and poetry. And this is Nattier basically summarizing Wagner's thoughts. So while the sorcerer of Bayreuth in Nattier's account couched his discussion in music and text in binary terms of male and female, he still gestured to the less normative gender construct of androgyny. So even though Wagner casts music as feminine, a deeper consideration of the qualities of music and of sexuality in general might prompt us to consider the intangible art of sound not as feminine, but as gender itself. Music and gender alike ebb and flow across the spectra of desire, both physical and spiritual. They are mutable, not so easily pinned down to a single meaning, despite humanity's deep longing to label everything from sexual preferences to Wagnerian leitmotifs. Altogether, while Wagner's music did not literally accompany the 1968 Takarazuka adaptation of Tristan und Isolde, the ghosts of old Klingsor are not so easily exorcised. The essence of Tristan und Isolde as a story of love and desire on the part of both female and male characters is crucial. Just as the opera, since its inception, unleashed incubating discourses on sexuality, gender, and romance, so too did the 1968 Tristan by Takarazuka. The rigid patriarchal codes of Takarazuka's administration and the performance of gender binarism in the romance musical failed to mask desires that were perhaps ineffable, but not necessarily unacknowledged or unrealized by its largely female audiences. Like Wagner's opera, the Takarazuka Review and its Tristan and Isolde epitomized the ambiguity of gender and embraced the romantic myth of the androgyne. Thanks so much for listening, and I look forward to seeing you during the question and answer period on November 14th at 4 p.m. Central Standard Time.